my name is Rachel Wybrany, and tonight I will be talking about Megaesophagus. Megaesophagus is a condition in which a dog's esophagus becomes enlarged and unable to contract food sufficiently so that it reaches the stomach. There are two main types of Megaesophagus, or Mega-E, which are primary and secondary. The main reason I decided to do my persuasive speech today on Megaesophagus was because my dog Toby was diagnosed with this in January. Our vet did not know what it was and did not diagnose him with this until he had already undergone surgery to remove a possible obstruction in his stomach, which is what she thought it was. So my specific purpose is to persuade my audience why Megaesophagus is not a death sentence for dogs. And my idea is why dogs diagnosed with Megaesophagus can live happy, long, and healthy lives. So primary Mega-E is a disease in which the main cause is unknown and is usually diagnosed in puppies who are born with it or young dogs who develop it. So it is usually idiopathically diagnosed, meaning the main cause is not known. In our case, Toby's mother was older when she had him, and so that can mess with the genetics and stuff because they have found studies of Mega-E being linked to older females giving birth, and one of his brothers does have Mega-E as well, so we linked it to that. Younger dogs with ME usually can develop either the primary or secondary form of it. And it can also be the result of an abnormal ring anomaly or persistent right aortic arc. Secondary ME is usually a disease found in older dogs, and it's less common than the primary Mega-E. Secondary ME is harder to diagnose and harder to detect because it is actually the result of another disease. It's usually an underlying disease that has just been gone on for too long of a time period, and so it just gets worse and worse. Some underlying diseases adult dogs can get that can result in ME is myasthenia gravis, hypothyroidism, and Addison's disease. And it can also be caused by diseases in the esophagus, such as inflammations, tumors, or exposure to toxins. A lot of dog owners and even veterinarians have never even heard of this disease and are very unfamiliar with it. I know I personally was, and our vet was not familiar with it, other than a scenario in which they had it at her university that she studied and practiced at for some time. ME is a very hard disease to diagnose as there can be a lot of misleading factors in it. Some warning signs of Mega-E is consistent regurgitation, which is not to be assumed to be vomiting. Vomiting would assume that the dog is heaving and it's very, very active, so it's food coming from the stomach and they're using their stomach muscles to push it out. Regurgitation is where it has not reached the stomach usually and it is trapped in the esophagus. So that is very, very passive and does not usually happen with like warning signs. So they can just be fine one moment and the next moment they're spitting up food and water. Weight loss and malnutrition is another major sign of Mega-E, and also aspiration pneumonia, in which happens when food and water become trapped in the esophagus for too long of a time. Because it is unknown and unfamiliar to many pet owners and vets, a lot of dogs diagnosed with ME or diagnosed with an undiagnosable disease, which meaning the vet doesn't know what they have, they end up becoming euthanized or even worse because the owners cannot afford to do the tests or they just can't figure out what is wrong with the dog. I'm here to tell you today that that does not have to be the case. Mega-E does not have to be a death sentence for dogs. While Megaesophagus is usually not outgrown, there are measures pet owners can take to manage the disease and even make it better and improve it if they're willing to put in the extra time and practice. The main treatment for ME is a Bailey chair, which I actually have here with me today. My dad built this for our dog Toby, who in January got diagnosed with it, and we almost lost him. So the Bailey chair actually helped save his life. And because of what the Bailey chair does, it boosts the dog up so that the esophagus will open naturally, and the gravity will do the work for them so that the food and water can go into their throat. I have my dog demonstrating. How he gets in and out of his Bailey chair. And basically it just boosts them up so that the gravity does the work for them, like I said. There are also other ways other than a Bailey chair that can do the same exact thing, such as elevated feeding, which means the dog would have their food sitting up on a stepladder and they would just have their paw sitting up. Another thing is elevated bowls would also work. But every dog is different, and honestly you have to just find what works for you. There are also Knox blocks and ice cubes you can use to help with the hydration part of it, with water and everything. And there's medicine that you can use. He takes metoclopramide, which is a muscle strengthener, and it helps basically him to digest the food and everything. And there are also different foods you can use. He does dried food that is soaked in water for about 5 minutes, but some dogs do canned food or slurry. And I know for a fact that Megaesophagus is not a death sentence for dogs, simply because he is a living miracle. And it is very manageable, and dogs can live healthy, happy, and long lives, even if they are diagnosed with this. So thank you and have a good night.